The neon lights of the small diner cast a soft glow onto the nearly empty street. A sleek black Tesla pulled into the parking lot, its engine barely making a sound. Nathan Reed sat motionless in the driver's seat, fingers tightening around the steering wheel as his stormy gray eyes fixed on a single figure through the window. Sophie Brooks. She moved behind the counter with the quiet efficiency of someone well accustomed to long, grueling nights. Her light brown hair was pulled back in a loose bun, though stray strands framed her exhausted face. Dark circles clung beneath her eyes, yet her smile remained genuine as she placed a steaming cup of coffee in front of an elderly truck driver. "Nathan shouldn't be here. Not this morning. Not again. Damn it," he muttered under his breath, adjusting his Gucci tie absent-mindedly. To any outside observer, this might appear to be nothing more than an eccentric habit of a billionaire. But Nathan Reed never did anything without purpose. And he certainly wasn't waking up at 5:30 a.m. for a cup of coffee. Nathan had been watching Sophie for months. He told himself it was just curiosity, an insignificant habit he could break at any time. But the truth was, he couldn't stop coming back to this diner every morning just to see her. This wasn't the kind of thing Nathan Reed did. He was a pragmatist, a strategist, a man in control. Feelings were nothing but variables, unpredictable, messy, and best avoided. But Sophie Brooks was the exception. He had looked into her background. A quick check from his assistant revealed the truth. Sophie was drowning in overwhelming hospital debt. Her father, James, required extensive medical care. She was trapped in an exhausting cycle of work and responsibility. Nathan didn't like unsolvable problems, and in his world, everything had a price. That morning, as Sophie stepped away to clean a vacant table, Nathan made his decision. By midnight, just before the diner closed, Nathan finally walked in. For the first time, he wasn't just there to observe. Sophie glanced up, wary. "We're about to close." "I know." His voice was steady. "I'm Nathan Reed." She crossed her arms, eyes sharp. "I know. You come here every morning. And I have an offer for you." He placed a business card on the counter. $2 million. Sophie blinked. "Excuse me?" "Night with me." His tone was calm, controlled, as if discussing the weather. No strings attached, no obligations. Silence stretched between them. Sophie stared at him, her fingers tightening around the dishcloth. "What kind of person do you think I am?" Her voice was raw with anger. Nathan simply smirked. "I think everyone has a price." Sophie threw the dishcloth onto the counter. "Get out of my diner, now." Nathan didn't rush. He pulled out an envelope, placing it next to the card. "Think about it," he said smoothly. "This money could change your life, your father's life." Then he walked away. Sophie stood frozen, her hands shaking, staring at the envelope, and she hated herself for even considering it. Sophie never thought she would call Nathan Reed. But as she sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the endless pile of hospital bills, listening to the deep, ragged coughs of her father from the next room, she realized one painful truth. She had no other choice. Her hands trembled as she dialed the number on the sleek business card. Her heart pounded as the line rang, and then a deep, steady voice answered, completely unsurprised. "Miss Brooks." Sophie gripped the phone tightly. "One condition," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "After tomorrow night, you will never contact me again. You will forget me, forget the diner, forget everything." A brief pause, then his reply was simple. "Agreed." The next night, Sophie stood outside one of the most luxurious hotel suites in the city, clutching the strap of her purse. Why did she feel afraid? She could turn around right now, go back to her exhausting shifts, her mounting worries, and the endless uncertainty of her future. But her father deserved a chance. She swallowed hard and swiped the keycard. Inside, Nathan was waiting. He turned as she stepped in, his storm gray eyes cool as ever. But for a split second, something flickered. Uncertainty. "You came," he said quietly. Sophie lifted her chin. "Did you think I wouldn't? With you, I'm never certain of anything." He poured 2 glasses of wine, handing one to her. She took it, but didn't drink. "Let's be clear about this," she said. "This is a transaction, nothing more." Nathan nodded, but his gaze never left her face. "Then why are your hands shaking?" Sophie froze, but before she could respond, Nathan spoke again, his voice lower this time, softer than she had ever heard it. "Tell me about your father." Sophie blinked. "What?" "James Brooks," Nathan said slowly. "I want to know about him." She should have been angry. She should have told him to shut up. But instead, she told him about the man who raised her alone, about the laughter that used to fill their tiny apartment before illness stole everything away. That conversation lasted all night, and by the time the first rays of sunlight stretched across the city, both of them knew. This had never been a transaction at all. Nathan woke up feeling strange. For the first time in years, he didn't immediately reach for his phone, didn't launch himself into meetings and stock reports. He just lay there, watching the sunlight filter through the curtains, feeling the warmth still lingering on the sheets where Sophie had slept. But she was gone. No goodbye, no trace left behind except for a small note on the pillow with 2 simple words. "Thank you." Nathan sat up, an unfamiliar hollowness settling in his chest. He didn't want to feel like this. This wasn't him. He had wanted to rid himself of this obsession, yet it only tightened its grip. Before he could think twice, he pulled out his phone. "Victoria," he said, his voice firm. "I want all of James Brooks' medical bills paid off. Today." A brief pause on the other end of the line. "That wasn't part of the agreement," Victoria reminded him. "The agreement is over," Nathan replied shortly. "Just do it." When Sophie walked into the hospital the next day, she immediately sensed something was off. Nurses whispered to each other. A doctor gave her a knowing smile. "Sophie," Mrs. Ramirez, the hospital's billing officer, called her over. "I have great news. Your father's entire balance has been cleared. Every penny." The world seemed to stop. "What?" Her voice came out dry. "Hospital fees, medications, upcoming treatments," Mrs. Ramirez continued, "paid in full by an anonymous foundation. But the paperwork lists Reed Innovations." Nathan, a fresh wave of fury surged through Sophie's veins. Without caring who was around, she pulled out her phone and dialed him. "Reed," she hissed when he picked up. "I don't need you to save me." Nathan didn't waver. "I'm not saving you, Sophie. I just couldn't stand by knowing I could help." Sophie gripped the phone tightly, her heart pounding with emotions she wasn't ready to name. He couldn't do this to her. He couldn't walk into her life, change everything, and expect her to feel nothing. But the worst part? She felt everything. Sophie hated seeing Nathan at the hospital every day. She hated how he always showed up on time, carrying a hot cup of coffee just the way she liked it, as if they had a routine. She hated how he sat with her father, James, talking to him like an old friend he actually cared about. But what she hated the most? She couldn't make him stop. At first, she ignored him. She refused the coffee, refused to engage in small talk. But Nathan didn't give up. He kept coming back, listening to James's old stories, standing beside her even when she refused to acknowledge that his presence made everything easier. One afternoon, Sophie walked into the hospital room and froze. Nathan and James were playing chess. James chuckled, moving a piece across the board. "The kid's good, but I still have a few tricks up my sleeve." Nathan arched a brow in challenge. "We'll see about that, Mr. Brooks." Sophie folded her arms. "Why are you still here?" Nathan looked up at her as if the question made no sense. "Because you're here?" Her heart skipped a beat. In the weeks that followed, Sophie realized something undeniable. Nathan Reed wasn't just showing up at the hospital. He was showing up in her life. He pursued her openly, but not in the flashy, extravagant way billionaires usually did. No flowers, no expensive gifts. Instead, he noticed the little things. He knew she liked her coffee black, but added a bit of sugar on the days she seemed particularly exhausted. He knew she liked to stand on the hospital balcony at sunset, when the weight of the world felt too heavy. He listened to her when she talked about her father, about the hopes and fears she had never shared with anyone else. And day by day, Sophie realized a terrifying truth. She was falling for him, but she wasn't sure if Nathan Reed, the man who once believed love could be bought, could ever love her the way she needed to be loved. Sophie knew this happiness wouldn't last. She had let herself get too close to Nathan Reed. She had let him into her life, let herself feel something she never should have allowed. And then everything fell apart. That morning, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. When Sophie picked it up, her screen was flooded with missed calls and messages. A text from an unknown number contained a link. One click, and the ground crumbled beneath her. Billionaire Nathan Reed and his $2 million night. A scandalous headline, dozens of photos of her walking into the hotel that night, transaction records, proof of everything. Her chest tightened. They knew. She ran out the door, heart pounding. If she had seen the article, so had her father. At the hospital, she rushed into his room, barely able to breathe. James was sitting up, his phone resting on his lap. His expression was unreadable. "Sophie," his voice was low and heavy. Her stomach twisted. "Dad, What did you do, Sophie?" His gaze was filled with worry and disappointment. "They're saying you sold yourself to that boy." Sophie shook her head fiercely. "It's not like that. It started that way, but what?" His tone softened slightly, but his eyes remained sharp. "You love him?" Sophie couldn't answer, because she couldn't lie. Before she could say another word, the hospital room door swung open. Nathan stood there, his suit slightly disheveled, his face dark with fury. "The board is forcing me to resign," he said flatly. "Stock prices are dropping, and they want me to deny everything." Sophie felt her heart sink. Nathan stepped closer. "But I won't." Her eyes widened. "Nathan, I'm going to tell the truth." His voice was steady. "Not the story the media is twisting, our story." Sophie felt her heart shatter, because she didn't know if that was the bravest thing he had ever done, or his biggest mistake. Sophie stood backstage, her heart pounding as she watched Nathan step onto the press conference stage. Below him, hundreds of reporters, flashing cameras, and live broadcasts waited. Nathan Reed, the billionaire who always controlled everything, was about to risk it all. He took a slow breath, staring directly into the sea of cameras. "My name is Nathan Reed, and I owe you the truth." The room fell silent. "Yes, I offered Sophie Brooks $2 million for one night." He paused, scanning the crowd. "And it was the biggest mistake of my life." A ripple of shock spread through the audience. Pens scratched against paper, cameras zoomed in. "Not because of the money, not because of the scandal," his voice was steady, "but because I was too blind to see that a woman like her could never be bought." Sophie clenched her fists, her heart breaking apart. Nathan's voice didn't waver. "She is not a number, she is not a transaction," he exhaled. "She is the strongest woman I have ever met." Then he turned toward the cameras, his gaze sharp, as if he was speaking directly to her. "I love Sophie Brooks." The entire room erupted. Sophie felt like the air had been sucked from her lungs, the world around her blurred, the flashing cameras and murmuring reporters fading into nothing. This was the same man who had once offered her a cold transaction, the same man who had believed love was just another deal. And now he was standing before the entire world, declaring that she was priceless. A sob tore from her throat as she took a step forward, then another, until she was running straight into Nathan's arms. Sunlight streamed through the windows of their small hillside home, bathing the room in a golden glow. Sophie stood in the kitchen, preparing breakfast, listening to the laughter drifting down from upstairs. Nathan and James were deep in debate over their morning chess game. "You only won because I got distracted," Nathan protested, mock indignation in his voice. James chuckled. "Kid, if you got distracted, that's still on you." Sophie smiled. A year ago, she never imagined she would have a morning like this, peaceful, filled with laughter, and overflowing with love. They had lost things along the way. Nathan walked away from his CEO position, but instead, he and Sophie had founded a charity foundation, helping patients like James. The world's opinion no longer mattered, because they had found what truly did. Nathan walked into the kitchen, wrapping his arms around Sophie from behind, his voice low against her ear. "I have a meeting this morning." Sophie tilted her head up. "Business or chess?" He grinned. "Take a guess." Sophie brushed a hand against his cheek, smiling. "You're going to lose." But this time, Nathan Reed wasn't afraid to lose, because now he had everything. The sun dipped low, casting a golden hue over the small garden behind their home. Sophie sat on the bench, cradling a warm cup of tea in her hands. From a distance, she watched Nathan and James walking along the shaded path. James was stronger now, strong enough to go on morning hikes with Nathan, strong enough to return to his love for chess, strong enough to tease Nathan about his terrible strategies on the board. Nathan watched as Sophie laughed with James on the porch, the golden sunset casting a soft glow on her face. For the first time, he realized that he could not imagine a life without her. "You love her, don't you?" James's voice was quiet but certain. Nathan exhaled. "More than anything." James patted his shoulder. "Then don't wait." Taking a deep breath, Nathan turned towards Sophie, hands hidden behind his back. "Sophie," he called softly. She smiled and stood up, but before she could speak, Nathan dropped to one knee. Sophie's breath caught. The velvet box snapped open, revealing a ring, simple yet perfect, a diamond that caught the last rays of the sunset. Nathan gazed up at her, and in his eyes, Sophie saw everything she never thought she deserved: love, devotion, and forever. "I used to think I had everything," Nathan said slowly, "but looking back, I realize I had nothing at all until I met you." The wind whispered through the trees, but Sophie felt nothing but warmth. "So today," Nathan swallowed, his voice unsteady, "I'm not making an offer, not naming a price, just asking one simple question. Will you spend forever with me?" Tears slipped down Sophie's cheeks, but her smile was brighter than ever. "Yes, Nathan," she whispered, 1,000 times yes. On their wedding day, the garden was bathed in golden light. As Sophie walked down the aisle with James, her heart swelled with happiness. James, stronger than ever, smiled, squeezing his daughter's hand before placing it in Nathan's. "Take care of her," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Nathan held Sophie's hand tightly. "For the rest of my life." Standing before everyone, he met her gaze and spoke. "I once believed that success was everything, that my career was the only thing that mattered," he chuckled softly. "But then, a diner waitress taught me the most important lesson of all, that love is worth fighting for." Sophie's tears fell freely. "And I promise," Nathan said, his voice thick with emotion, "to love you every single day, just as you taught me how." 5 years later, in that same garden, 2 little girls ran across the grass, their laughter filling the air. James sat on the porch, watching his granddaughters play, his heart overflowing with joy. Sophie leaned her head against Nathan's shoulder, whispering, "So, have you finally won that chess game?" Nathan chuckled, pulling her closer. "It doesn't matter anymore." Nathan pulled Sophie and their daughters close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Because love was never something to win, it was something to give."